and welcome back to Reactivity TV. I'm Amy Albero, and I'm a licensed therapist.
I am Chris. I'm not a licensed therapist, but what I am is an individual viewer who is suddenly suspicious that perhaps Jen has made an enemy of somebody in production, because this is the second episode in a row where Jen gets a real bad look. And this one was subtle. While last week's episode was really bad for her, I think a lot of people might have missed just how bad this was, because a large part of her entire narrative was blown up in this episode. And I am actually quite excited to talk about that, because quite frankly, outside of that, this is a pretty freaking boring episode.
It definitely was less entertaining than the previous 3 episodes, that's for sure. But before we get into everything that we're going to talk about today, well, first, let me just, elephant in the room is I'm a little sick, so my voice is going to be a little like this, so I apologize in advance. But we are here today, back again in Mexico on vacation, talking about Jen's season of The Bachelorette, season 21 of The Bachelorette, episode 4, and they are in Auckland, New Zealand. So we're going to get into all the things that happened during this episode today. But before we do, please hit that subscribe button, that small thing that goes a really long way. We really appreciate it. And we saw a bunch of subscribers come through last week. So thank you. We see you. We appreciate you. And keep it coming.
Also, please hit that bell icon so that you're alerted anytime we post new content to the channel. And a couple of other elephants in the room. Yes, I know we're still in the room. I want to be clear. Last week, the resort did not say, Mr. Chris, no, you can't do it on the dock, period. The dock is actually closed because of the winds and because of the wake and surf, and they thought it was too dangerous. And I was hoping that maybe this week I would get a, yes, Mr. Chris, go for it. I did not, unfortunately. So we're back in the room. The other elephant in the room is, you know what the best part about Amy being sick is? Before we started recording, she's like, Chris, please don't say anything too crazy. I just don't have the energy to fight with you. And of course, that means, Chris, say all of your most controversial shit in this episode, because Amy doesn't have the energy to fight with me. But seriously, it'll probably be a shorter episode because I've got to get this one to dinner and then to bed, so that we don't ruin the rest of the vacation. So,
wait.
What?
That's how you're starting? You don't think you need to start with a huge apology?
Apology to who?
To me.
To Jen? I am not apologizing to Jen about anything.
I am owed an apology. I have been vindicated since the last episode. I just have to say.
About what? I don't even know what we're talking about.
Are you serious?
I have no idea what we're talking about.
Quadrangle?
Quadrangle is not a shape. You can continue to die on this mountain or this hill, but quadrangle, it is true that a quadrangle is a category of shapes, right? Saying something is quadrangle does mean it has 4 angles, but it is not actually a shape.
Do you see what he's doing right now? This is what Chris is really good at, is acting as though he knew this all along. When we both looked it up together, and he was like, no, don't even do it. You looked it up and sent me a text from the pool while I was like playing volleyball or something like that. That's what really happened. So I maintain that Sam M, Thomas N, and Devin were in a quadrangle. Fuck the rhombus. Quadrangle it is.
I really like the rhombus, though. It's like my favorite of the 4-sided quadrangles, right?
Nice use of that word.
Do you like that? All right. So shall we get into opening thoughts?
Opening thoughts. I agree with you in that this was not the most entertaining of all. I also agree, not for the reason that you said, but I did think to myself like, Jen must have pissed somebody off because of one of the dates that she was put on today.
Interesting. Okay.
But I still find it entertaining. I still am loving the season. I like this group of guys. They showed some real character this episode, so I enjoyed the watch. It wasn't like huge high fives by the pool this week, but I'm still happy to be here talking about it, even while sick.
Yeah, I mean, my leading narrative for this one is Jen. We've said, I think in episode 2, or maybe it was last episode, we had said how we were really tired. Jen needed to get a new narrative because it was starting to fall a little bit flat for us. And she continued on to that narrative this week, and then that narrative got blown up at the end of the episode. And so, I think that is really the major takeaway from the episode. There are a couple of other interesting things that happened that I'll get into once we get further into the episode. But one in particular is I think that we witnessed potentially a subconscious, but a very interesting sort of headspacey, shrinky sort of thing I want to get your opinion on with respect to a dichotomy between Marcus and Sam M, where I really, when we get into Sam M's one-on-one date, I want to get your thoughts on that. Okay. But other than that, I think I wrote nonsense about 12 times in my notes. It was just a boring filler episode that felt like it was just a bunch of nonsense that I was not interested in, did not care about at all. And so I felt a bit of it, maybe a bit like a p-hacker, which is a statistical term, or it just basically means I was really, really digging hard looking for stuff to be interested in this episode, because there just wasn't anything on the surface and wasn't any 1, 2, or 3 layers deep. Wasn't finding it this episode. Yeah,
I feel the same way, honestly, but we still do have stuff to talk about, so let's get into it.
Yeah, all right. So let's move to our newer segment, Good Date, Bad Date.
Yes, we had 3 dates. We had 2 one-on-ones and a group date. This episode, first one-on-one, or first date rather, was the Skywalk, sky jump in quotes.
I love that you quoted that, because I have major complaints about calling it a jump. Yep.
So the sky jump. Then we had rugby. Mm-hmm. And then finally, we had some exploration of the Maori culture.
Yes. So let's take them in order. The one-on-one date, it was, it felt more of like an early afternoon, maybe like a brunch time conversation at the top of the tallest building in Auckland. They then go and do the sky walk, and that turns into the sky jump. I will say that I didn't hate this conceptually. I don't know if I necessarily like it as a first date, but they had some time to sit and chat one-on-one, and then you were going and doing an activity that will elicit a large amount of emotion and feelings. So I didn't hate it, but it wouldn't be something that I would pick necessarily.
Yeah, this is a hard no for me.
Really? Okay.
Hard no. I felt Jen with every fiber of my being watching this. I couldn't even watch the screen. I had to look away, especially when they put the camera through the grates and you saw the 639 feet down or whatever it was, 29 feet. And yeah, this is a no for me. No, hard no. It's a bad date.
What about if you weren't terrified of heights?
I can't
get there, just can't even visualize such a thing. Look, I for one of my pet peeves, one of many, is that this whole I'm scared of heights. Yeah, everybody's scared of heights. That's just, it's like being scared of the dark. We're all kind of scared of the dark. That is an anthropological kind of recessive fear that we have from when we were living out in the wilds without any protection. Yeah, because jaguars eat us at night, and because when you fall down and you don't have doctors around the corner, you break things and you hurt forever. So we are all actually programmed to be afraid of these things. But we could just, I don't know, maybe evolve a little bit, use our 2024 senses, and say, hey, I'm strapped into this harness. They're not going to let me fall. That's a big lawsuit on their hands. They don't want to pay that out.
Still a no for me, dog. Okay, next date, rugby.
So listen, I've got the exact same complaints I had last week. This is a date where ultimately Jen is not participatory in any way, shape, or form. I do think that this was not a date that was designed to be a good date. This was a date that was designed really more for the audience than it was for Jen or the connection in any meaningful way. And so as far as the date goes, absolute fail. It's for the same reasons I've said in the past. There's no one-on-one time. She's not participatory in any way. The best that you had was the after party. And so maybe because there actually was an after party, sometimes there's not, maybe you go from an F to a C- just on the after party alone, because there is time for one-on-one. Because I think as long as you have an after party, you can never be worse than a C-.
Yeah, that's fair. So this is one of those dates that can't exist out
in the real world.
Yeah. Unless you're playing something together, like we see later on in the episode where Jonathan and Jen are playing lacrosse or something like that.
Yeah.
But there is, as I was saying to you while we were watching it, there is something that is so attractive about seeing men who are just really good at sports, or seeing athleticism displayed. And maybe that's my bias of being an athlete, and I just find athleticism really attractive. So from that perspective, I like it. And I think you do get a bit of a sense of kind of seeing how men are going to rise to the occasion in a way. But yeah, to your point, Jen is she's very peripheral, literally on the periphery of the state the entire time. So yeah, I'm not sure how many like connections were being formed on the main portion of the date itself.
Yeah.
But like her being a viewer of it, like I'm sure it was a great date for her in that sense.
Yeah. So peek behind the curtain, I play volleyball when we're on vacation every day, 11 o'clock sharp. Amy has never played. Maybe you played one time in all of our trips to Mexico. And everyone, whenever we're short on players, everyone's like, oh, why doesn't Miss Amy play? And my response is that for our marriage to succeed, she has to stay as far away from me when I am playing sports, I think is, I think that's held true. Because every now and then you'll see me from the balcony when you come back to the room or something, because the room we always get overlooks the beach, and you never have kind things to say about my volleyball
like,
prowess.
You had a good serve here or there.
Yeah, I served 15 times. You had one good serve. It's a really good thing that we didn't connect over sports, I have to say.
Yeah, and we could definitely not play together.
No, I tell all the people, all the other players, all the jugadoras, if you will, that I would be sleeping on the couch if you played volleyball. You'd be so disappointed in me. So yeah, but date 3, one-on-one date, cultural. Mm-hmm. You know, I gotta say, this one actually is really funny to me because we have not talked about this yet, but my suspicion is that we are going to come down on completely different sides of this date. Let me say that I when we come on vacation, I love going to see the ruins. Chichen Itza is amazing. Tulum, great. Coba are some of my most favorite ruins. I will go see those all day long. I will go experience the Mayan culture all the time. We go to Thailand. I love going to see this stuff. And your patience for that, you will go, but your patience for that is basically 90 minutes. And you're wonderful and respectful every time you're there, and you go and you do exactly what you're supposed to do. But at that 90-minute and 1 second mark, you're ready to get back in the car and get back to the resort. And so I didn't hate this. I don't think it was necessarily a great like first date or second date, but you know, as an activity, I love the activity. I think they gave them opportunities to talk about themselves, talk about their backgrounds, their futures, gave them opportunities to learn more about one another, using the backdrop of learning about this very cool culture. But that being said, it was not super exciting. As a viewer, I was bored. Even if I was interested in learning about the culture myself, as a viewer, I was bored. And I can only imagine, I'm going to take a guess and say that you were both bored as a viewer, and this would have been your own personal hell as a date.
No, just my own personal hell would be the first date.
Okay, all right.
No, I think, listen, I like that ABC spent so much time giving us a viewer insight into a different culture, and a culture that I truly knew nothing about. So that was very cool. And it seems like a really interesting culture to learn about, like deep-rooted culture, which might sound redundant.
It feels redundant, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is, while watching, I was kind of getting a bit bored, and I was just imagining myself there being like, okay, it's time to move. And like, maybe that makes me sound bad or disrespectful. There's only so much that I guess would want to participate in.
Yeah, I think the fact that this was the third date in an otherwise, up to this point, a lackluster episode that wasn't filled with that much interesting events, I think that didn't help the date along as a viewer. But you know,
but we did learn a lot about both of them. I think, as you said, it was a good conduit to learning about family culture, traditions, things like that. So for that sense, I think it was a really meaningful date as well. And again, that a really interesting culture. I was not expecting that.
Yeah. All right. So we're coming down. Good date, bad date. You are a hard bad date. You're 0 for 3. Bad dates across the board.
I think for the most part, I'm bad date, with rugby being like maybe toward the middle, because Marcus and Jonathan and John were incredible athletes, and that was cool to see.
Gotcha. Okay. And I come down on I'm a good-ish date on the 2 one-on-ones, and basically a C- to
maybe you're
fail
just jealous because of their
athletic
skills.
I gotta say, I like the sport of rugby. The one I love being from the United States, but there are certain things that I do feel like we miss, and rugby is one of them. I feel like that's a sport that I could really get into. not I didn't say play. I said I could get into watching. I could see myself really rooting for a. I'm a big fan of giant, massive human bodies smashing into one another at really fast speeds and watching enormous, freaks of nature with freakish athleticism do really cool acts of physical impressive. I can get on board that all the time. That's why I love football and hockey, but hockey I can't follow because it's so hard to follow hockey. All right, shall we get into the events of the episode?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So, as we said, they're in Auckland, New Zealand. Looks like a beautiful place. Yeah. Have you ever been to New Zealand?
No. Would love to go.
My little brother went to New Zealand one time. I have not been. We almost went to New Zealand, didn't we? Mm-hmm. We were gonna do a sailing trip somewhere. Maybe it was that the Fiji Tahiti trip, and then that never fired though because of COVID, right? Mm-hmm. And then we were gonna spend a week sailing around. I think it was Tahiti or Fiji, one or the other, and then we were gonna do a week in New Zealand. And then just because that trip didn't happen, we never made it. That's sad. We should revisit that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So we start off with the classic. Jen shows up. The guys are all hanging outside, and she whisks one of them away. And the one she whisks away is Sam M. See this coming? Yes, no?
Not really, honestly.
Either. I thought it was a strange pick. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I think to her point, like one of the things that she was saying, I believe in the ITMs was they have this really strong physical connection and it's time to see. I mean, she is halfway through, if you think about it. Mm-hmm. So it is time to see if there is something else underneath the physical chemistry that they have. And so, again, at this point, it's time.
Yeah, spoiler. I don't think there is. But so I was a little surprised too. I wasn't expecting Sam M because they have such a strong physical connection, because Sam M is providing so much great drama. While we're on the topic of Sam M, I do want to revisit what we say a few times throughout the season, because Sam M apparently is taking a lot of heat out there, and there's a lot of family getting involved, jumping on social media. I do want to remind everybody that, as we say every episode, every season at least, and a few times throughout the season, we are assuming that everybody on this show is performing a character. Some of them are really, truly characters, like Sam N, where he's just literally wearing a new character suit every week. And some of them might be performing closer to who they are in reality. But we are not making judgment calls about anybody individually, about who they are as a person. We are talking about what we see in a very edited and produced show. So just keep that in mind. We assume that what we see on screen is not actually truly 100% who these people are, because production needs to give us a show. Someone needs a villain edit, someone needs a redemption arc, whether they deserve it or not. Sometimes you're just the best person to fulfill that role. So so just remember that.
Yeah, I think that's really important to point out, given the recent commentary from Sam M's family. We don't know Sam M, we don't know any of these men, and so we do, understand that this is an edited TV show. We view everything through the lens of what we see on the screen in the way that it's portrayed to us. We have no way to know. We weren't there. We have no way to know what really happened. And so that's what our opinions are based on.
Yep, exactly. But with that, Sam M gets a really bad edit again this week. So we end up at the brunch kind of time frame where they're having their conversation. We didn't get a ton of really deep, meaningful conversation.
No, it's kind of awkward and stiff.
And this is exactly what the problem is. When Sam M is sort of forced into a public setting where he's set across from her and he can't just jump all over her and drive things physical. There does not appear to be a lot of depth, does not appear to be a lot of conversation skills, and it's sort of like very lackluster. We get the waiter come out and say, hey, guess what? At the top of this giant building, you get to go out and you can do a skywalk and a sky jump. And this is where things really got interesting and broke down, because Sam... Jen comes right out and says absolutely not, which I thought was interesting, and I want to come back to that. She's a flat out hard pass, hard no. Okay, fine. Sam M says, no, we're doing it. Now, Jen gets really upset about this, and they have like this not a discussion, not a fight.
Back and forth.
Some sort of confrontation, some sort of power struggle about this. And eventually Sam M, kind of concedes the point. But it doesn't appear to have been really a genuine concession at all. It was really just to move kind of the plot forward, it felt like.
Yeah. Okay, I'll reserve this face for the later part in the day, because he does that twice.
He absolutely, yeah. We're gonna get there. So they do decide that they're gonna go up and do the walk.
Right. Well, let's go back. So Jen says that she basically, what her point of contention is, you are making a decision on both of our behalf without discussing it with me.
Correct. Okay, so let's talk about this, because you had looked over at me and said that feels like something you would do.
No. That wasn't what I was responding to. I was more saying there was a dynamic there where I would immediately be a hard no. Like I would hear something like this and be like, nope, not. This just happened a few nights ago. At our resort, they do nighttime activities, and someone came up to us and said, essentially, would you be willing to participate, like a part of the show? And I was like, immediately no. Like I even made my hands like this, like no. And meanwhile, Chris is like, well, and for himself, not for me.
Yeah. I would say, hey, if you need a body on stage to whip around or something, like, hey, I'm available, sure.
But I feel like we've been in situations on vacation or something like that where like something will come up that sounds scary to me, and I'll immediately shut it down. And you're like, hold on, like I could imagine you saying some of the things that Sam did.
Well, and this is what I want to talk about, because I think that there's a way to go about this, right? Now, Sam got there eventually, but it was a day late. It was a day late, dollar short, right? And that was, he said, no, we're doing it. And the response is, hey, in 50 years, when we're looking back at this, I don't want to have any regrets. And I think this would be really cool. I've got you, and nothing's going to happen. I would have, played to both the, hundreds of people do this every single month. You're perfectly safe and fine, the logical side of the brain. And then I would have also conceded to think about the memories and think about the sentimentality and nostalgia that we'll have about this. And then I would also try and get the side of your brain, the comfort side of your brain, and the trust side of your brain to feel like I've got you, right? And if I can hit on all three of those in decent measured pace, then I should be able to get you to say yes. He did none of that. He just said, yes, we're doing this. Bulldozed straight over, and he could have gotten to a yes. And he didn't see it, didn't understand. She said it multiple times in her face to cameras that, he wasn't reading the room at all. Finally, he laments. And laments is the wrong word. Finally, he
relinquishes.
Relents. Thank you. Finally, he relents in a kind of a lamenting fashion, and they agree that they're just going to do the sky walk.
God, I can't help my face from doing that whenever I think of this exchange. I think because I find he does that then for the skywalk. So sorry, yeah. I promise I will try to keep my face under wraps until it's time to actually talk about it. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I mean, any opinion about that? I mean, in terms of like.
Yeah, it kind of felt like when he did it then and when he did it later, it's kind of like, well, of course we could just do the skywalk. Like it was as though it was like a little manipulative in a way, because it was like he was so dead on, like, no, like we're going to do this. I don't want to have any regrets. I really want to do this, whatever he was saying, and not listening to her at all. And then I think he realizes he's losing in a lot of ways, Yeah. And then he becomes this like, why didn't you just say so? Let's just do this. It was just, he didn't say that. I'm being hyperbolic here, but it was such a 180 that it was almost a little crazy making, that it was like, of course you don't have to do it. Yeah. And that was what kind of irked me a bit. And he did that again later. Yes.
I thought it was just a bad look all around. There's no way to sell this as anything other than a bad look. So they end up going and do the skywalk. They get up there, they're harnessed in, and basically...
she's freaking out.
And so this is what I want to talk about. Obviously, Sam M does a horrible job across the board, but that's not what I really want to talk about here. So she has skydived with Marcus. She demonstrated a small amount of fear, but she, at the end of the day, jumped out of that plane and appeared to be having a grand old time when all was said and done. Now, she has come back to Marcus, and we saw it later in the episode, not to get too far ahead, but we saw it in the group episode where she has gone to Marcus when she needs stability and a rock. A quick spoiler, in the group date with Marcus, it was the first time in this entire show where we saw her lead and drive the conversation in a direction where she wanted to go and not sit back and let the guy come to her. And she drove it in really a beautiful way. It was one of her best looks of the entire season, and how she navigated the conversation with Marcus and how she really broke down one of his big walls in really quite a beautiful way. And we've seen her jump out of a plane with Marcus. And so I want your take on this. Jumping out of a plane is far scarier. You are tethered to nothing. You are thousands
more
of
than
feet up.
10,000 feet.
Yeah, whatever it was. And yet she did not appear to have the hesitation at all that she had. Whereas she's like shaking in fear and freaking out with Sam M. Now, from a subconscious perspective, is this telling us that maybe she consciously hasn't realized that Sam M is a bad pick because she's not comfortable with him, whereas with Marcus is a better pick because she is comfortable? Are we seeing her subconscious brain telling her something that her conscious brain has not yet realized?
It's an interesting take. I think one of the other factors that could kick on the fight or flight that Jen actually alludes to is that you can actually see the ground here on the skywalk.
You can see the ground when you jump out of a plane too. It's just a lot further away.
She was in the cloud. So there is this a little bit of like ignorance is bliss type of thing. So like you can literally see you crashing to your death right here. So I think there's that piece of it that might trigger it a little bit more. But I think what you're saying about the way that Marcus related to her versus the way Sam M related to her, and the way that we see Jen react differently in these two similar situations, is very insightful. And we see in this episode when Sam M like just gives her a hug, that's really all she needs, and then she's able to go. And whereas Marcus, she didn't need to ask for that from Marcus. Marcus did it from the jump. He was there with her, sturdy the entire time, so attentive to her. Like I just remember them sitting in the plane. He was just watching her, encouraging her, just being, again, sturdy. Where Sam M was there for himself to jump off this building to say that he did. And so I think that, yes, likely subconsciously she felt safer and more comfortable and more trusting or secure with Marcus. I don't think in that moment she was, consciously comparing those two exchanges, but we see it play out very clearly. And that's, I listened to another podcast, and one of the podcasts was saying, like, you just jumped out of a plane, but like the situations are really different based on who you're with. Yeah.
And that's basically the point that I keep coming back to, is that she is doing things, selecting Marcus in places and times where she needs stability, needs a rock. And that's who she keeps falling back on. And Marcus just continually shows up for her in a way that doesn't feel like he's been friend zoned yet either, which I think is important. Whereas Sam M and most of the other guys, they keep missing the beat. So.
Yeah, no, I think so. And when we see Sam M again try to use sexuality and their physical chemistry to kind of move the plot forward, like when he's leaning over the side and says, it will make it better if you kiss me. And it's like, again, read the room, dude. You just don't have it. And it's like I can't even imagine Marcus putting her in a position to do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, all this to say, the day portion of the date, the main activity portion of the date with Sam M was a total fail. And I think the thing that is so frustrating to watch play out, and we see this a little bit later in their date, is that all Jen keeps talking about is this experience of being in toxic relationships where she keeps giving and getting nothing in return, or she's giving, 80% and someone's maybe giving her 20. That's exactly what we're watching happen here. That they spend this entire date with her freaking out and Sam not giving her anything until the very end when he gives her a hug, and she's like, he gets it, he gets me. Oh my and then it's like,
and that was a bad look for Jen. Like, hello, like, where are your standards? Like, that's all it took. That, like, you fought with him for how long? He was an asshole for how long? And then suddenly, finally, he goes and gives you a hug, and suddenly you're ready to jump off this building, and suddenly, he's great again. It just feels like she's not, ready to make good decisions long term. She's still being led around by the emotional side of her brain and not following the rational side.
I think we see her so clearly vacillating between, who she's been and who she wants to be.
Sure.
I feel like that's I can empathize with her in feeling like, when we are in stressful situations or when we're in new situations, we go back to our baseline, we go back to what we know. And so I feel like in these moments with Sam M, we see her kind of do this stutter step back. And then we see her in moments of greatness and shine, like with Marcus, for example, or with Devin, or, and that's her growth, is when we see her acting mature and feeling and being held by these healthier examples of men. And then this experience with Sam M is like her lizard brain. Like that's the underdeveloped part of her that she's still trying to work through and figure out. And whenever we make change, like, it's never linear. She's never going to be fully plowing forward in these healthy relationships. She's always going to get pulled back for now until she continues to have enough experiences that can help move her forward.
Yeah. So in the end, they do end up jumping off the building, which really was just a rappel down the building. Theme of this episode is anticlimactic. So many anticlimactic moments that had so much potential to be cool. This was just one of the first. Okay, so you're rappelling down, whoop-de-doo. And just kind of quickly coming back to Jen maybe not pleasing production. She's been in a helicopter, she's jumped out of a plane, and she's done this skywalk, rappel down the side of a building. For somebody who's scared of heights, they are really putting her in the air a lot.
That's when you had made the point about not making production happy. Not they didn't tell her that she was doing this knowing that she's petrified of heights. So I was like, oh shit. Like, maybe she's kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm just suspicious that maybe there's something going on behind the scenes. Maybe she's not a pain in the ass. Maybe production, maybe they're just jealous of her. That could be. Jealousy will make you do crazy things too, Or
maybe they think she'll be fun and down for anything too.
That's true too. And so let's just, I don't know. Or maybe she just doesn't have that many other interesting threads to pull on. And so they're like, well, we got the snake thing. How often can we go back to the snake thing? And then we've got the heights thing. So let's just keep rocking what we got, and we just don't have that much.
All right, let's go to the nighttime portion.
All right, so we go to the dinner portion of the date, and can I just point out that at the beginning of this episode, Jesse does point out that the reason that she's not allowed to eat on her one-on-ones, and they're showing the little picture-in-picture, because he was so disgusting during the one-on-ones, literally shoveling plates of pasta in his mouth and talking with his mouth open. And I gotta say, after seeing those clips of Jesse, I get it, production. I get it.
Is that why you've placed a plate of food in front of us?
I just want to point out that last week I was going to do a pizza in front of us, and you said, I don't need the pizza in front of us. And I said it'd be like a one-on-one date. And so this week I went and I got us cookies. So you've got cookies for our one-on-one podcasting date.
Thanks.
Yeah. She's not going to eat the cookies. I'm going to eat them one by one when we get home. That's what's going to happen. All right. So dinner portion of the date. This is not good.
No, this is again Jen leaning in order for Sam to lean in. She tells him about her experiences with her family and growing up and her dad and not feeling worthy or deserving of love.
The same story we've heard almost verbatim multiple times in a row.
We heard more about her relationship with her dad, her family today than we did in previous. It's usually been about like her toxic ex, but no, we heard about her father today, which I thought was different. But it wasn't until she shared that he then shared. And he didn't really talk much.
Well, he gave a lot of platitudes, and he talked about his prior engagement, and the girl was cheating on him. I mean, there's a couple problems here. One is it wasn't delivered in a way that was particularly believable or genuine, to the point where I was questioning whether the story was even true. Now, I am not going to call him a liar without proof, and so I will assume that the story is true. But if I was sitting in Jen's seat, I would sit there and say, the way this is delivered doesn't seem like it's a true story. Now, but let's assume it is. Fine. It just the whole delivery and prior to that kind of just everything was so surface level. It was a lot of platitudes. There was not a lot of depth. There was not a lot of emotion to it. There was no explanation about how he was feeling or anything like that. And what did Jen respond with? The most ambivalent wow. And we know that she's bad in these situations. We have plenty of evidence at this point that show she's bad at understanding how to have that empathic response to somebody. And so I wasn't expecting that she was going to be able to rise to the occasion here either. But this is actually just might be the most lackluster of all the 3 times we've seen her kind of fall down in this situation. When they have to sit there and have a conversation, the chemistry from in the room dries up, and there is just nothing there. It feels like. Am I wrong?
No, it was very stiff. It felt like they were almost they were on 2 different dates. It was not good. I did not see it at all. It was so stale and stiff and boring. One of the things that Jen does walk away from the date saying, which was very frustrating, she says, I believe in her ITM, he's been engaged. So that means that he understands what like relationship and marriage is.
I'm so happy you brought that up. Yeah, it was, my response was, why have you drawn that conclusion? What evidence is there? I know lots of people who have been engaged and married multiple times who still haven't figured it out. Why is he had a failed engagement? Somehow he understands what it's like to fight for a relationship, what it's like to put somebody first. Considering we have all this other evidence of his behavior demonstrating that he has done none of those things and learned none of those things. And suddenly you learn that he was previously engaged and say, oh yeah, so he must know. It is what's the therapist-y word for when somebody sees what they want to see and draws a conclusion based on one data point, even though they have all the other data points say,
I don't know, confirmation bias.
Confirmation
perhaps?
bias. Thank you. Yes, confirmation bias.
I know we've been talking about this date for a long time, and I am ready to move on, but there is one other thing in this date that I wanted to talk about. They spent what felt like a really long time talking about working hard at a relationship, or relationships are hard work and they're going to put in the work and they're going to fight for the relationship. They both talked about this. And this is something that I felt like I wanted to get your take on as a man, get your take on as a person that's in a relationship, seen a healthy relationship. Because this is something that in my work as a therapist, I feel like gets a little bit of a misnomer on the idea of like working hard in a relationship and fighting within a relationship or fighting for a relationship. And I guess I just wanted to get your opinion on this.
Yeah, I'm not a believer in this whole concept of, relationships are hard, right? They're effort. You have to put in the effort, and you have to be willing to put in the effort, and you have to want to put in the effort. But if the effort is worth putting in, then it shouldn't feel hard. I do lots of things for you, and like I do them because I love you, because I want you to have a good life. And like, I don't always want to do them. I don't always want to put in the effort, but I'm more than willing to do that. I don't find that hard, right? And so I think that there's, the English language is a weird language, and words have a lot of different meanings. And hard seems to have is one of those words that has a lot of meanings where people interpret it to mean like, oh, it's a struggle every day. There's at no point in time in the almost 17 years we've been together have I ever felt like our relationship is a struggle, or that there's a danger of our relationship falling apart. Like that's never even crossed my mind. Because our relationship is not hard, right? It's actually a very easy relationship because we're very compatible, and because we both put in the effort every day to make sure that the other person is getting what they need. And some days one of us maybe doesn't have the capacity to put in the same amount of effort as somebody else. And there is an understanding that there's going to be an ebb and flow between the effort that we can each put in, but part of the what makes a relationship work is having that understanding and not being so selfish that, oh my God, like, Chris made me dinner 5 times last week, and you know what? He only made me dinner 3 times this week. That jerk, he just doesn't love me anymore. Like, it's like, no, maybe Chris is just really exhausted this week, and he just didn't have the physical and mental capacity to make dinner, right? And that's okay, right? So yeah, this whole relationships are hard thing, I don't agree. If a relationship is truly hard and truly a struggle, I think you need to look at the relationship and look at yourself and say, what is making it hard? What is it making it struggle? Is it lack of compatibility? Or is it lack of maturity? Or is there something else getting in the way? Is it that, maybe it could be something as simple as the jobs that you have and where you are in your stages of life, you might be really compatible and you might both really want it. But if you're both at two completely different stages going in two completely different directions, it might not work regardless. And you need to identify what is making something a struggle, what is making it hard, because relationships should not be hard and they should not be a struggle.
I think one of the more challenging things, the lessons that we learn as we grow and mature, is when to say when, and whether that's in a relationship or in a job or in any part of your life, like when to know when it's time to leave the party, so to speak. And I think so often in younger, less mature relationships, we see people stay in them for too long. They haven't figured it out yet, and maybe that's also what we're seeing here with Jen and Sam M.
Do you know there was this study is very old now, but it's could be 25 years old. But they did a kind of survey style study where they took everybody's first relationships and they tried to make somewhat of an objective cutoff of when the relationship probably should have ended versus when it did actually end. And the average first relationship that people have tends to last almost a year and a half longer than when the researchers suggest that it should have ended.
Not surprising.
Not surprising at all. I know mine certainly lasted more. My first serious relationship definitely lasted a year and a half longer than it should have.
Yeah, same.
Easily.
Well, I think people confuse it with, like, again, when we're watching Sam M and Jen on this date, I could see them rationalizing, like, yeah, we had to get through today because relationships are hard. It's like, no. What you are demonstrating is a lack of compatibility, and you are fighting to try to be compatible with one another. That is not the same thing as what, like, you're describing. What makes a relationship hard is that you can't be selfish all the time, and sometimes you have to do shit for somebody else that you don't really feel like doing.
Like go to the nighttime theme nights at the resort.
I was going to say go to the Mayan ruins.
Those two.
But I think that's oftentimes what leads people to remain in unhealthy and oftentimes toxic relationships, is this idea of, like, no, relationships, like people, we go through struggle, like relationships are hard, we need to fight for it, and while yes, there's an element of that that is true in the case of Sam and Jen. What we're seeing is that's something you want to drop the rope, like stop playing this tug of war, like just end it. To finally conclude this date, Sam M does apparently do enough to get the rose, and he goes on to fight another day, to keep the main thing.
And when you say to fight another day, you mean fight with other people for another day is really what you mean.
Yep.
So we go to the group date.
Yes.
Rugby.
Big
fan. I am. I like that. I don't know. How do I watch rugby in the United States? I gotta check on that. I gotta find me. Hey, people in the comments, if you're rugby fans, definitely tell me who the best teams are. Tell me who I need to start, like, YouTubing, like, some teams and figure out when they play. I wanna start following rugby. That'd be my. And is it like football, like American football, where they play like one day a week? Because that would be awesome. It'd be great for my schedule. That's why I can't follow baseball. I'm not watching baseball 7 days a week. Hockey is like, it goes from like Tuesday at 2 p.m. to suddenly Thursday at 9 p.m. It's like too difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, give me some rugby teams, people. Let me know who I should be following. Let me know the top players. Start me off some knowledge here.
You're such an athlete.
Hey, listen, I am.
Someone said that once.
The last time we were here in April, I was playing volleyball with some people that were on an intramural volleyball team, and they asked me what my history playing volleyball was, because they thought I was like, a varsity, like, volleyball player and stuff. I said, no, I'm a professional vacation volleyball player. I come on vacation, I play volleyball the whole vacation. And they were absolutely amazed, and they thought that could not possibly be true because of my level of skill.
I think they might have just been trying to win you over with compliments.
I mean, they were going home the next day. We was never going to see them again. They didn't have to be nice to me. It must have been true. They must have just really thought I was so impressive a physical specimen.
Must have been it.
Yeah.
Okay. Quite many physical specimens.
I mean, freaks of nature. These guys are awesome to watch. Jonathan, I expected Jonathan to be great. I did not expect him to be great in sort of the, and forgive me, rugby aficionados, the running back style position. I don't know what it would be in rugby, but really, he had some nice jump cuts.
He shined in general on this day portion and night portion.
Yeah. I mean, but he just physical specimen. Grant did great. I mean, it was so clear.
Our boy Marcus.
Yeah, Marcus did great. It was so clear that they were. There was some real freaks of nature, some real physical specimens on that field, and it was fun to watch. The little portion, I would have loved to have seen the whole game. I would have preferred cut out all the other dates and just give me the rugby game, and I would have however long it was, I'm in, completely in.
Yeah, I love it. I think really the main thing to talk about regarding the rugby date is Sam N.
The whole date in particular. So Sam N, this is the love virgin. He's, the one at the Thunder from Down Under, I think it was last week, was the one who wasn't going to dance. This is my take on Sam N. Last week, we saw, that he was very shaky. What's the word I'm looking for?
Self-conscious.
Yeah. Last week we saw that he was very self-conscious, and so he leans into this, I'm going to be the sweet kind of romantic-y type guy, came across as super, super beta, obviously did not work with Jen. So this week suddenly he's coming out as alpha. It just feels like, to me, he's just trying on different suits to see which one's going to fit and which one's going to get the attention of Jen, and but none of them are authentic to who he is. He doesn't seem like he really knows who he is, and so it just feels like it's like just suits. I don't even know how else to describe it. Just trying on characters. Like
he's a chameleon.
The chameleon, yeah, not even a chameleon, because a chameleon can sell it. He couldn't even sell this, right?
Like he was playing Halloween.
Dress up or it's Halloween costumes where he's just trying a bunch of different personalities on. None of it landed, and Jen saw through it, I think, pretty quickly.
His whole thing this episode, or his whole thing that he stated this episode was, I'm here for Jen. I'm just going to, screw all these other guys. I'm not going to focus on them. I'm just going to focus on Jen, be all about Jen. And so the way, those are words we have heard before from other men, right? And his interpretation of what those words meant played out very differently than, let's say,
Correct.
a Devin.
Yes, I mean, there's a couple of things I'll say. One is I do appreciate the act as if, because when you saw him in the rugby game, you saw him take some heads off, and that was actually quite impressive for a guy that I was not expecting a lot of physicality from. And I do think that on one level, good for him, really good for him, because I do think it's, there's a lot to be said about act as if, and if you're not, if you have a lot of self-confidence issues, go out there and try on and see what personalities fit. Maybe don't do it on national television, but you should try these things and see if, hey, you know what? I'm kind of an asshole all the time. Maybe I'm just going to go to this one event and maybe I'm just going to act like my friend who's not an asshole and just see how it works for me, right? And sometimes you know what? I'm not getting the response I want when I go out to the club. So maybe I'll act like my, bro-y alpha friend for a night and just see how it works. I do think that these are important things to try and do, because how else do you grow as a person, and find out who you are authentically without trying different things. But I mean, Sam N took it to the nth degree.
Well, this was just another Sam who did not read the room.
Yeah.
Again, I think in the rugby game, I agree with you. Cool, good, go for it. I didn't even mind the Jen's future husband on his jersey. I didn't mind it.
I didn't mind that.
Fine.
I did mind the jersey he brought to the party. That I thought was a step too far, but yeah.
Whatever. It was more the attitude after the game.
Agreed. Yeah.
That I think was problematic as a viewer, and what the other men in the house had a problem with. It's like he stayed in this persona. He forgot to take off his costume. Yeah,
and the other thing was he didn't really understand, what it means to put somebody first. I think that he gets called out by the guys. The guys all kind of sit him down. He's insulted all the guys several times. So the guys all come and they sit him down and they're like, hey, Grant does the leading talk. I thought Grant's approach was phenomenal.
Agreed.
It was mature. It was respectful. It was, hey, I'm going to open up with a compliment, and then I'm going to say some problems that we're having with the current behavior, and we're not going to make it personal or anything like that, but we just want to let you know, like, we think some of this is disrespectful, and Sam N is having none of it. He can't even hear it. And they talk about it later. Jonathan jumps in and tries to pick up where Grant left off. And again, Sam N is not hearing any of it. It's just a lack of maturity, lack of understanding. He's in this character at the moment. And what he's saying is not actually what he's doing in practice. And he can't even see it. And it's pretty clear that he can't see it. Yeah. I think where it gets interesting for me is the conversation is already over. It's clear that Sam N has been called out and he is ignoring everybody. So what does fucking Thomas N do? Why does this guy feel the need to poke his nose in? He's not getting a good edit. He's actually not a particularly well articulated individual in these situations. He is a high emotionally volatile individual, right? And he doesn't seem to know that about himself. So he has a tendency to act rash. He comes off poorly, and he doesn't articulate his points well, especially when he's in a more emotionally heightened thing. And he tends to just pick fights that aren't his fights to pick. A and B aren't winning fights. It's like what battles to choose. And so he grabs Sam N and decides to pull him into the hall and proceed to try and have the same conversation that they all just failed at again. And the whole thing is like, why?
Well, and we were watching this, and I was saying they're both right, but they're both wrong. And what I was trying to say to you is like, yeah, the point that Thomas is making is correct. However, the counterpoint that Sam was making back to him was, all this time you're spending with me right now, you should be with her. And this is now the second time we've seen Sam do that. Thomas do that.
Correct, yes.
And again, like, to your point, Thomas didn't need to go and have this conversation for the third time. He did it the worst of the three of them. And Sam didn't listen the first two times. Why the fuck do you think he's going to listen to you?
Yeah.
And so I just felt like here, like, Sam N was making a better point at this point. And then, the reality is, again, Thomas tells on himself here because the reality is he doesn't also know how to carry on a conversation. And the reason that he probably gets distracted with these side plots is because he doesn't really have a connection with Jen or struggles with communication. We fast forward, we see their interaction. It's so awkward and so flat. And she's not really engaged at all in what he's saying, which must feel really uncomfortable for him, considering that they're the only two in the whole show that have a shared culture.
And on paper, they should be a great match on paper.
In some ways, they have more compatibility, shared culture than anybody else on the show, and he just can't land the plane.
Yeah. Not just shared culture, but also they have similar familial backgrounds. It's background and culture, which are two actually distinct different things. And you're absolutely right. Can't land the plane is a great way to phrase that. Yep. I just look at him as he's an emotionally volatile individual, and he gets distracted easily, and he picks fights that are not good fights. These are all big red flags. They're maturity concerns. But it's the type of thing where what's going to happen when you're out and about in public with this individual, and like, what fights is he going to choose to fight on one day, and what fights is he going to choose to fight on another day, and why? And you want consistency. Like, look, there are times, there are certain battles that I'm going to fight every single time, and you know it. And you may not like that I'm going to fight all those battles, but you know what battles I'm going to fight, just because I'm consistent, right? You know the things I'm going to let roll off my back, but I just feel like with Thomas N, you just have no idea. On any given day, it's like, is he going to fight every battle today? Or he also doesn't lead. He tends to follow.
Totally.
And you get the sense like he's going to jump into any battle that anybody else is fighting. He's automatically going to jump in on top.
Well, the epitome of Thomas being a follower was that he repeated Sam M's line that he said 1,000 times, which is keep the main thing, or make the main thing the main thing. When he said that, I was like, I just can't even. You're a fucking hologram here. Like, you're not a real person.
There's that. There's also, I've talked in the past about how both Sam M and Thomas N, they will always set their sights on the person who appears to be grabbing Jen's attention the most, and that's where they're going to suddenly focus. And that's oftentimes Devin, because Devin sets him up. But the one time that Devin it got redirected, was it Spencer? No, it was actually it was Spencer.
Sam N.
It was Sam N. It was Sam N. in the past, and with his conveyance of love at the Thunder from Down Under. And Devin jumped in and basically took fire for him again to get it redirected. But here it is again. He goes out there and he does something, and Thomas N cannot contain himself. Sam M's not there. He was not on the date. Thomas N was there, and he cannot contain himself. Somebody else made a bigger impression than he did, and thus he has to suddenly direct all of his firepower. And Devin's not there to now, I don't know if Devin would have necessarily bailed Sam N out this time, but we have a very strong understanding of what Thomas N's personality is, and none of it's particularly good. If
not flattering,
it's not flattering. It's not good if you are looking to make him a life partner of some kind.
I agree.
So I have one other thing I want to talk about Sam N here during the entirety of the date, before we kind of get on to the remainder of the other people and the conclusion of it. And that is his constant use of the phrase boss bitch. He kept saying, I am giving boss bitch energy. And I want to say, Sam N, I completely agree. Here's the thing, the problem, is that boss bitch is not masculine energy, it's feminine energy. Boss bitch is a female empowerment phrase used to identify strong women like yourself who own businesses and do stuff like that. Never in my entire life.
I find that term offensive, honestly, as a woman. But
yeah, look, I have a lot of problems with that. But that's what it's used for. And never once in my entire life have I ever heard boss bitch ever used to describe a man. And I will agree, Sam N, you were acting like a bitch.
Little bitch. A
little bit. Yeah, I do agree that I don't particularly like the phrase for a variety of reasons, but am I wrong here? It is in fact a term that is exclusively used to describe powerful, empowered women, correct?
I think it was a term that was meant to empower women.
Yeah, and that's been usurped, and now everybody tries to claim that mantle.
No, it's not that. I think it's one of those terms like boss babe or like, why do we need to, like, it is more offensive.
Call women bitches?
Well, to call women bitches is wrong, bad, not empowering, but also to qualify something as a boss babe, like, why not just call me a boss? Like, and to add babe to it makes it seem already like it's less than, and I don't like that.
I think that's fair. So long story short, Sam N, sure, be that boss bitch if you want to be that boss bitch, but it does not play well for him.
Does not.
Yeah. So ultimately, we did see Thomas N go take some time. He got a couple of minutes before naturally, because poke the badger, and this is what's going to happen. In his alpha male costume, Sam N interrupts Thomas N's date a couple minutes in. Thomas N tries to get a few more minutes, but it's again that that power struggle. Thomas N I keep using lament
relents.
Today. Relents. Yep, I keep using the wrong word today. Thomas N relents, and how long did Sam N's date here last? Was it 30 seconds? Perhaps
not very long.
Not very long.
It was so cringe. It was so bad.
On every level, it was cringe. Has any guy in the history of the world ever asked to kiss a girl and it ever been hot? Ever?
I think it probably depends on the guy, on how much the girl likes him and what the context is. But him grabbing her hand and saying, "Can I kiss you?" when they don't have any chemistry or compatibility at all whatsoever was not hot. It was not it at all. So they have this very cringy exchange where it's becoming more and more clear that they are on very, very different pages. And Jen she has a moment here where I had a respect for her. This is what I wanted her to do last week, is to say, essentially, I don't see us getting there. Let me walk you out.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying that she's a weak lead, where she's been unable to tell a guy like, hey, I'm just not into you and we need to end this. And this was finally the first opportunity that she took to actually execute on this. And I do applaud her for it. I mean, granted, this was real low-hanging fruit. I mean, if she couldn't do it in this situation, I don't know when she would be able to do it. But still, she did it. And so I'm going to give her credit for that, because finally she said to a guy flat out, no, you just got to go now. This isn't for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we have what is maybe my favorite moment of the episode for sure. And that's with Marcus.
Yeah. I mean, Marcus, I alluded to it earlier. This was a different date than any we have seen this season, in that, not date, but time together, in that every other one, the guy comes in and the guy drives where the conversation's going.
Or what the activity is.
Or what the activity is, exactly. This was the first time and the only time thus far that we've seen Jen come in with an agenda and execute on that agenda. And it wasn't, kind of a crappy, lame thing. It was, no, I want to have a real conversation with you about something. And it wasn't like, because I want to get to know you, or because I have questions about you, or because I need to get to the truth of something. It was, I really just want to know something about you. It was really actually a really kind of beautiful moment to see her in a different light and taking, driving the conversation in that way. And I thought, I'm such a fan of Marcus. It's again, there's so many reasons why. But you saw it peel back a little bit. You saw him open up a little bit. You saw how hard it was for him, the way he's able to vocalize why it's hard for him. The way he says, I need a minute, I thought was also, it was an interesting moment, because, it shows that he kind of knows how to ask to take a beat. One of the problems you have when you start dealing with a lot of alphas and stuff like that is, do they know do they have the kind of the emotional intelligence or the awareness to say, I need a moment before, I say or do something I'm going to kind of regret. And he's able to take that moment, and you saw it there. And I thought every part of this I loved. I loved Jen taking the lead. I loved the way he responded. I loved that he opened up a little bit. Yeah, he's such a good guy. Yeah, no, I agree. He's very endearing. And I think, as cliche as this sounds, like, he's such a good example of like a well-rounded, like, strong person, someone who is physically strong and brave, but also like can be vulnerable and can let his guard down, like can talk about feeling embarrassed, or can share, like, all of that stuff. Like, it was really, really beautiful to see. And again, credit needs to go to Jen here, because when Marcus was telling her about his experience with his injury, we were critical of her, and like, yeah, that was like not a great reaction, but she clearly heard him and clearly understood what he was saying, and what she displayed in terms of empathy and the way that she did it was really well done. It started out being a little bit playful, but then she wouldn't let up in a way that also was caring, and that demonstrated that she really cared about him, that she could be persistent in a nagging way. And I thought she did a really good job, and it was just such a good depiction of a partnership. And I think, again, let's juxtapose this to Sam M and her. This is a moment of a relationship being hard. This was tough. This was a tough conversation that they were having. Not because they were angry at one another, but it was because it was raw and vulnerable. And that's what can make a relationship feel hard, is that it's not always something, like, these conversations aren't always something you walk away from and feel amazing after. It's like therapy. Like, sometimes you walk away and you feel great, and sometimes you walk away and you feel worse. But that's like when you're doing work in a therapeutic relationship or any sort of other romantic or platonic relationship. And I think you could see that here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved every part of this interaction. Yeah. Yep. And not surprisingly, he does get the group date rose. We really didn't see much else on the group date at all. No, right? This is when we see Jonathan and Jen play lacrosse. Yep. We learned that they both played lacrosse in college, which was cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not much else here.
going on.
Yeah, outside of this one-on-one time, I didn't feel like we got much else in terms of really truly deep. A little bit with Devin, but on his one-on-one, but otherwise, this made up the bulk of the really true, non-surface level conversation for the date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of Devin.
Yeah. So Marcus gets a group date rose, and do we want to talk very briefly about the back of the house interaction?
Go for it.
I love production. They're such assholes. They make Devin and Sam M just sit across from each other in the living room, just staring at each other. And of course, Sam M can't contain himself. Devin's just going to sit there and he's not going to say anything. Sam M starts making it like Devin's the one who's got the problem with him, and Devin's like, I don't care, dude. Like, I don't care at all. And Sam M says a bunch of things that we know factually are not true because we've seen it. Like, I don't. Your name's never coming out of my mouth, dude. His name is the only thing that comes out of your mouth, like literally.
Besides, make the main thing the main thing.
Yeah, and so it was just sort of like projection, but it was just the whole thing was just like.
The thing that I really liked. I liked it, and I wish that Devin held on to it, was Sam M, his level was up here. Like, his voice was raised, he was being antagonistic, and Devin was, like, de-escalated.
Chill, yeah.
Just chill, not meeting
whatever,
where
dude.
he's at.
Yeah.
Just like, okay, man, like, not into it. And then I don't know how long that was going on, and then Devin sort of met him with, like, somewhat of an aggressive tone. But I was like, seeing that is a way to de-escalate someone. Is to just like stay low when someone is escalated. After a while, they have no resistance to go up against.
And that's also the most fun when somebody's like super upset about something, and you're so just like chilling, like, dude, I don't care at all, like zero cares, because it's like. In order for you to stay mad, and in order for you to really like, you have to, you call it resistance, you have to have something that you can like bounce off of, and something that's going to meet you, and when somebody just literally is just like, whatever, dude. Like, yeah, okay, don't care. Like, there's no way for you to look good in that situation. There's no way for you to even justifiably continue to be upset, because you just look irrational. And I agree. I wish Devin had hung on longer. But again, he's 20-something. Like, I give him credit for what he did manage to do. I'm not sure I could have done that at 25 or however old
he's
Devin
28.
is. 28, yeah. I'm not sure I could have done that at 28. So I give him a lot of credit. I loved it. Good stuff.
So Devin has his one-on-one date.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can make this one a relatively quick one because it was it wasn't a lot of really interesting stuff. They talked about their families. He talked about his mother being his mountain. He was
really forthcoming.
But he's always pretty forthcoming. I don't think
he asked her questions.
Yep.
You don't see that happen a lot on these dates.
No, not a lot at all. But I thought it was Devin being Devin. He zones in. He focuses on these dates. He's very focused on Jen every time. He always asks her questions. They always have good conversation. He always provides new information about himself that is relevant, that is insightful into who he is as a person without it ever coming across as a trauma dump. It always comes across as genuine, but it's never too much. He did it again. I mean, it just, for the date that he was given, he aced it, is my personal feeling. But again, the date was not an exciting date necessarily. But what I do like about it is you were dropped into a situation where you're dealing with people of other cultures. And I do always like to watch how people interact with those of different cultures, because I do think it's quite telling how in their own adaptability.
Yeah, he got right in.
Yeah, getting right in. Because, it's one thing to be respectful when you're dealing with cultures you're familiar with. It's quite another when you're dropped into a situation where you're dealing with cultures that you are not familiar with and having to read the room to figure out what is appropriate, what's not. It's a different kind of reading the room. And what I like is that we think that Devin has a tremendous amount of situational social insight. But how well is that going to translate? And we didn't see a ton of it, but it seemed like it translated well, which says that insight is a broader awareness, and it's not necessarily super focused.
Seems like a smart guy.
Seems like a very socially aware smart guy, and I'm for it and I like it. But that being said, I don't feel like we really learned. There was no paradigm change here. It was Devin being great at being Devin.
Yeah. I mean, that's not to discredit or invalidate any of what he or Jen shared.
Yeah, it was a very successful date, very great date, but it was not paradigm changing.
Yeah. Did any of what you learned about his upbringing, his family, help you have insight into who he is as a person?
Something that I really appreciate was when he owned how his perception of his mother has changed, and how he acknowledged how he did not really understand when he said like, I want to go live with my dad, stuff like that. He understands now how wrong he was and how that probably hurt his mom, and how she still showed up and fought for him all the time. That is something that people deep into their elder years still don't see about their parents. And for him to have that kind of insight at 28 shows a level of maturity that I think is very respectable, very laudable, and just causes me to really think even more highly of Devin, despite his brash nature and his, sometimes annoying personality.
I'm glad that you talked about that. That for me was such a really important thing to hear them both talk about. That like in hindsight, with a greater perspective or different perspective, they can look back at the way that they were in their childhood or adolescence and realize that they were wrong, and that they in a different context see what their mothers did or how they acted in a different light. And I think that does show so much maturity. I think that shows a level of self-work that you had to have gone through in order to see things like that. And I think what Devin is describing in terms of, idolizing his father and putting his father on this pedestal and taking things out on his mom is something that children typically do when there is a more absent parent or a less present or less secure parent. It is so much safer to take out all of their anger or resentment or just upset on the sturdy, secure parent, because they have the trust that they're not going anywhere. Whereas the parent that's not as present, is not as secure, is a little bit shakier. And so they can't risk taking out all of the feelings that they probably have on them, at them.
So that's really interesting, because the question I was going to ask you is, and maybe you've already answered it, is it sort of a immature version of the grass is greener? But it seems like you're saying, no, it's not a grass is greener. It's that one parent has already demonstrated they can be trusted, and thus when you're young and you don't understand all these feelings and you have all this aggression that you need to take out, you're basically, taking it out on the sturdy parents.
Sure. There's that's a big part of it. So that's one facet of it. There's another where, and this is again, to go back to Jen's narrative, it sounds like they both might struggle with it in some way, but like this worthiness thing, mm-hmm. right? Like when as children we have an absent parent, it is too threatening to us from our perception of safety to imagine that a parent is not in a place to care for us. That's too scary to think about. And so we internalize it and we think it must be us. It must be something that we did that makes us unlovable, not worthy, not good enough, that we take that on. It's easier and safer for us to think that than to think that a parent who was literally placed on this earth to care for us can't do it. And so we also see a favor, a fawning given to the more absent parent as almost a way to kind of appease or win over or try to prove worthiness to that parent, to try to get them to care for you. And so it's a trauma response in a lot of ways, but we see that happen a lot too in young children, especially when there is some sort of like relational rupture or trauma.
Interesting. Okay, so anything else we want to talk about on this date?
No, it just, again, they seem to have a real connection. Yeah. So, and we see, in addition to the Marcus conversation, as you said, like the depthiest conversation so far. So unsurprisingly, Devin gets a rose.
So shall we move on to Matthew?
Matthew.
Matthew. For those of you who are unsure who Matthew is, so this is where production really kind of did Jen dirty. So
and / where editing shined. good job.
Yeah, I mean, look, so
great.
Long story short, Matthew is one of Jen's ex. He wants her back, and so he flies to New Zealand to basically confess his love. They dated 3 years ago. They've then been off and on since then. Supposedly the last few months they've been, she sort of friend zoned him, and he comes here to confess his love. So when this first started coming down, I was really annoyed because I'm like, we're just going to get one more of these clout chasing assholes, and it's just going to be such a red herring. It's going to be annoying. And then Matthew shows up, and I realize that this guy has the energy of basically a turtle. Like he's
not here for TV.
He is not here for TV. There's no personality. There's no charisma, Riz as the kids call it. Yeah, it's just bad. And so you suddenly like, oh, maybe he is for real. So Jesse has a conversation with him,
which is delusional.
Yeah. I mean, he does have one of those faces that kind of looks familiar. Like he kind of just looks like a million other people, but he's not a bad looking guy, but he seems short, right?
Okay. The delusional part is that he came.
I mean, there's lots of this that's delusional, but sure, that's part of it. Yeah, I agree.
Because let's do the math. She's 26 now.
Yeah.
3 years ago when they broke up,
23.
She was 23. And they dated for 3 months.
3 to 4 months. Yeah. And
when they were 23, they broke up for 3 years.
They were on and off for a little while, and then lost connection. And so we don't know how long.
After she gets back from Joey's season, they go.
Yeah.
She says
they reconnected
as friends.
Yeah.
But then he says that they were planning to go to a couple of weddings together.
Yeah, I don't.
So either she. Go ahead.
No, look, I think it's all suspicious, and this is here's the problem. So he shows up, he surprises her. She has a response that isn't like, oh my God, what are you doing here? I'm so upset, or like it's very much it's a very platonic sort of smiling, hey, nice, what are you doing here? It's cool type thing. It was a very like sort of not what I was expecting response from her. Here's the problem. Okay, the whole narrative that we have been getting is about how she's never been in a great relationship. Every guy has been toxic. She has done the thing that you hate, and that is she uses always and nevers all over the place. The narrative that she has told in this entire show is that she's never had a good relationship. Everybody's been toxic, and
no one puts her first.
No one puts her first. Whatever. What's the first thing she does when she jumps on the ITM is, oh no. This wasn't the toxic guy. Somebody else was the toxic guy. And I don't know how many of you noticed this, but suddenly
there's
toxic,
just one guy.
It suddenly went from plural to singular. It's one toxic relationship. Oh, and wait a second. So this entire situation effectively blows up her entire narrative, which is problematic for a couple of reasons. I said at the top of this episode,
I think she's the toxic ex in this guy's story.
Probably. But here's the thing. So last episode, I said that it was a really bad look for her because she looked selfish, she looked immature. But the thing is, and she looked not ready. But the thing is, looking selfish and immature and not ready are character flaws, sure, but they are also things that you can grow out of, and they're things that you can recognize in yourself and work. What this episode portrayed in a much more subtle way, what it actually spoke to was the character and her integrity, because it painted her as a liar. And that is something much harder to come back from. And production clearly knew about this, and they dog walked her, let her tell her narrative all through Joey's season, and for the first 3 and 3/4 episodes. Yeah, well, no,
I'm from a broken household, and I don't know anything about love.
Sure, I think she talked about toxic relationships back then, but it doesn't matter. Either way, we got 3 and 3/4 episodes where production literally dog walked her through this narrative, only to blow it up in the last quarter of this episode and basically show that her entire narrative is more or less a lie, and that was shitty on production's part, and it makes Jen look terrible on the back of an episode where they just got done making her look extremely selfish and extremely mature. This has been 2 bad episodes for her, and there's no way to interpret this. Suddenly it went from all guys to one guy. Suddenly this guy, oh no, this guy's nice and this guy's sweet. We're just not really the match kind of vibe. It's like, no one puts me first, and all I want is somebody to show me these gestures. This guy just fucking flew to New Zealand for you. What kind of gesture are you looking for if this isn't enough? The whole thing is a bad look for Jen, because it literally destroys her entire narrative regarding the toxic exes.
I'm with you. Here's a counterpoint.
Okay. It's a produced show and we knew that she was lying anyways?
We all have our own narratives.
Sure.
And we referenced confirmation bias. We can lean really hard into a narrative, even if it's not completely true.
Most people do.
And especially if it suits us in some way, especially if it helps us understand our position in life and the relationships that we've had. A narrative is a narrative for a reason. It's because it serves us, even if it's an uncomfortable narrative or an unflattering narrative or an unhappy narrative. My counterpoint is that Jen isn't out there trying to be a liar. I think that she might genuinely believe this is her narrative. And I think that this guy, Matthew, like probably doesn't fit into her narrative. And so she can discard that consciously or subconsciously. But I think her narrative remains true, is that no one loves me enough. And I think that is what she is believing. And so she is discarding all of this counter data, because she needs this narrative to be true in order for her life to make sense. And actually, plug for a recent episode of our other podcast, Wishing You Well, where we talk all about narratives and why we have them and how to shift our narrative in order to live a happier life. Great episode, truly, with a great guest, Carly King. But this is effectively what I think Jen is doing. And now she's being faced with this other reality of, oh wow, like maybe it's not all this way. Like she, again, as I said before, this is a fork in the road moment. She can either look at her life, step back and look at it and see the facts for what they are, in that I had one bad relationship and one relationship that wasn't for me. And I grew up in a home where my dad rejected me and my mom. Those are the three main facts as we know them. Oh, and my mom gave up everything for me to have the life that I do. 4 facts as we know them. Two facts that support I'm loved and capable of being loved, and 2 that support I'm not. And it is safer to believe the more stressful one, because having that idea of like the worst case scenario is what we believe will keep us safe, as counterintuitive as that sounds. So Jen has a choice right now. She has this literal other fact that just showed up to say, maybe you should question your narrative. You have an opportunity now with all these facts, looking at all these things right in front of you. You now have an opportunity to make a different choice here. Are you going to make a different choice? And if she wants to proceed, again, consciously or not, with this narrative of I am unlovable, that gives her the permission to choose Sam M. If she is able to look at the facts on the wall and say, you know what, maybe I need to take a step back and do something different, she has the opportunity to choose Marcus. And we don't always make the right choice. We're not always ready to make a choice. But now we have the facts. And so I think that's what's so amazing about this is what happens in our life all the time. She's confronted with her reality, which is different than her narrative. We'll see what she does.
That was really, really interesting. And I want to summarize what I got out of that, because I think you touched on some really important things. So, meaning
I meandered for a bit, but that's
no. So what I heard from you is that because I have a karate trophy, I'm actually an athlete.
That's what.
I have a little league trophy too from baseball.
Uh-huh.
I'm an athlete, everybody.
Yes,
I cannot believe it.
Yes, that could be a narrative that you choose.
Yeah, and I'm a volleyball god.
That's what some people say.
Yeah, people that I really trust. Don't know their names, we'll never see them again, but I trust those people. No, getting back to it, that's actually really interesting. I have nothing more to add, because you said it so beautifully and said it more articulate.
I'm more interested in seeing what happens now.
In her response.
Yeah.
Are we still gonna hear about, all of her toxic relationships, or is suddenly for the next half of this season,
her narrative
are we going to see a different narrative? Yeah.
Because when we're attached to a narrative, it also attaches us to a certain set of reactions and behaviors. And so if she can shift her narrative, I mean, this is a defining moment here for her.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the only thing that I will say is, with respect to this entire thing, I did think that the whole Matthew thing, forget about the whole depthy part of being a defining moment for Jen. I think Matthew doesn't have the presence, so it was very anticlimactic from a viewer perspective. And ultimately, he asks, can I join the season effectively? Because it's pretty clear she's not going to run off with him. And from the trailers, it looks like he's going to, in some way, shape, or form, be at the next rose ceremony. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm not interested or care at all. I think it's all just a red herring. And I just sort of want to push beyond this part of the plot. But I do agree that I'm very interested to see how her narrative changes as a result.
If her narrative changes.
It should change. We'll see.
Doesn't always happen that way.
Yeah, no. All right. Should we move on to
Rose and Thorn?
I'm happy you asked about my rose this week.
Love it. My thorn this week.
I hated to see that. So why don't you lead us off this week with your rose?
Okay. My rose is that Sam N is gone, which means that we only have one Sam, so I don't need to use initials anymore. I could just say Sam, and it can mean Sam M. Similarly, though,
Thomas A is gone.
Thomas A is gone, so we could just say Thomas. That is my rose.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Also, we've been getting John M. And
Jonathan.
There's only one John, and I've been trying to figure that out because John M does not appear in any of the marketing docs, only John. And so it's got to be because it's a John and a Jonathan.
But Jonathan's clearly going for the Nathan here.
Yeah, like I don't understand why we need the M. So I feel like we can drop the John M and just go with John and Jonathan. That feels like...
Let's do it. Can we agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm in. I'm in.
So we have no more initials.
Is that true? I think that might be true.
It's my favorite part of the season.
Yeah. I got a rather simple rose this week, but we actually heard Austin talk. He spoke in this episode.
We did? What did he say?
We did. Yeah, no, it was during one of the little things, and he didn't say anything meaningful but he was on screen.
Oh. He doesn't really get a lot of screen time.
He gets 0 screen time, and he was literally like just this blank canvas where I just had no idea what to expect from him. I just think the hair is a little bit weird, but the guys clearly like him in the house. And so I thought that was, it was just nice to finally get something from him. Mm-hmm. I finally figured out who the guy who went home 2 weeks ago is, that we were like, who is that guy? It was Marvin. Did not even, I was cleaning up, the template for the edit job, and I've got all the pictures of everybody in there, and I don't have their names, I just have the pictures. So I was trying to delete the pictures of the people who went home, and I'm looking at this picture. I'm like, two people, both of them. I'm looking, I'm like, I have never seen either of these two. It was Marvin and Ricky. I had no recollection. And so I had to go back and look, and Ricky went home night 1, and Marvin was the one who went home night 2 that we just didn't even know his name. One of them spoke French. I don't remember which one. Does Marvin sound like a French name to you?
Could be.
Is Ricky a French name?
Could be.
I don't know. Neither of them made an impression, but I finally figured out who that person was. It's been driving me nuts for 2 weeks now. So those are my roses.
What about your thorn?
Why don't you do your thorn first?
You don't have a thorn, do you?
I got to think about a thorn. I'm still working on it.
My thorn is kind of a simple thorn.
Okay.
I might come up with another as we continue talking, but my thorn is, this is a major show, right? Big franchise show.
Yeah.
They're in these incredible locations. Can they give us some variety of dates? Do we really need 2 jumping off high places dates? We just had one. Can we change it up? Come on, be creative. Use that art department. Let's get something different going here.
I agree with you. Some diversity
Like I could see like keeping the sky jump, because it clearly seems like something that they do in Auckland.
It is regionally dependent. Yeah, like I could do things that are regional, like skydiving. You can do anywhere. Mm-hmm. The helicopter stuff. I do feel like the helicopter stuff is it can be very regional. You can do it anywhere, but like certain places like Hawaii, where it's just it's a thing you do there. So I could see that, but
so yeah, just I love a little bit more variety. We just had a jumpy date. I'm out.
Yeah, yeah. Also, this is a big show. They should have a big budget. Like sometimes it doesn't feel. Like Joey when he got to go in the.
Well, The Bachelor has a bigger budget than Bachelorette.
Oh, is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, patriarchy, huh?
That's right. Go ahead. What's your thorn?
Oh God. I mean, there's a couple things that come to mind. You know, like we don't have any cats in this episode again, which is really annoying me. You know, we're not on the dock, which is that's a frustration. You know, but you know, I really didn't like the whole Matthew plot going on. But I guess I'm gonna go with. I just think my thorn. It's a production thorn. Production's getting the thorn this week. It was just a boring episode. It just was not climax. Nothing landed. They tried to go with a couple different, you know, climaxes and none of them landed. Matthew was boring. Even the altercations with Sam N was like lackluster because all the guys were super respectful. You know, because Sam M and Thomas N weren't in the same room at the same time. Like they didn't have the to feed off of each other to get super elevated, so they were both relatively muted. You know,
it was kind of a flat episode.
It was a flat, boring episode. Yeah,
I wouldn't say boring. I mean,
we had two super entertaining episodes back to back, and this was a big regression to the mean. And I'm not for it. I want entertainment.
We'll see what happens next week.
Yeah. And with that, shall we get out of here?
Yeah.
All right.
So we will be back next week with episode 5 of Jen's season of The Bachelorette. We will be back in Connecticut. We will no longer be here in Mexico.
Sadly,
so
yeah.
Recording with regular equipment and hopefully me feeling better. So we'll see you then. Until next time, you can follow along with us on Instagram at Reactivity TV. You can also follow me on Instagram at Amy Albero LCSW. You can follow Revive at Revive CFW. Also, if you haven't already, if you've made it this far and you are not yet a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button and also that bell icon so you don't miss new content when it hits our channel. We'll be back next week with more. See you then.
See ya.
Bye.